today we're just going to cover a couple of things, including some introductions and background about the program, as well as what this means. What are we talking about when we talk about market data overview? Some key questions. We'll go ahead and run through some scenarios of the different kinds of outputs that you can use with this tool, as well as a demo, just to give you a quick overview of what the portal looks like, and again, some of those custom queries that you can run to find out what's going on in your markets, as well as how to get started and any other kind of questions that you might have. So this is us, this is the panel. My name is Erica Tenike, and I'm the Director of Research and Development for NAED. I've overseen this project for the last 2 years. And I'll go ahead and introduce Toby and Dan, who I've been working with for the past year to develop and launch this particular offering.
So hi everyone, my name is Toby Swope. Senior Director of Data Information Systems at D+R International. So my role on this project is really to work directly with NAED to make sure the system reflects what NAED and the task force. NAED has a task force of about 10 distributors that have been contributing their insights in terms of what they'd like to see out of the system. So I work with that group to make sure that what you're going to see as far as the demo reflects how you as a distributor would want to use the website and the tool.
And I'm Dan Vita, Senior Manager of Market Intelligence at D+R. My primary role on this project is developing the market level estimates and performing a lot of the background analyses that go into the final tool. At D+R, I typically work on wholesale distribution data programs. So this right now and a program with the HVAC industry are my two primary projects. And this one's a little more new, but have been working on wholesale data programs for about 8 years now.
Thank you. So why now? We've been talking about market data for a long, long time. So why is NAED producing this and offering this to our members? Well, one is just member feedback. We've heard from a lot of folks that they want good data, and data is going to help drive your decisions moving forward. So as an association, as the Electrical Distribution Association, we wanted to provide an offering that took the best of the best, the different ideas that we heard from our distributor members, and put it in a tool that you can actually use. And the great thing about this tool is that it is based on member feedback. Toby talked about that task force of 10 distributors that we've been working with for 2 years. And essentially, this got started in about fall of 2016 when the NAED board approved of it. Shortly thereafter, we put together a task force of distributor members, and it ranged in size from anything from local all the way up to the national level. We basically asked for their wish list of what do you want to see in a market data program, took their ideas and their suggestions, put it together in RFP, sent it out, and we got a lot of great proposals because this is something that a lot of people were asking for. Ultimately, the task force recommended that we work with D+R International for a couple of different reasons. One, everything they do is in-house. They don't actually use any third parties to help with this data. And we partner with them. It's kind of like PAR, we partner with them. So they do the heavy lifting. They collect the data, they report it, they analyze it, and that kind of thing. But ultimately, we own it. And they wanted something that NAED owned, because we don't have anything at stake at this. We want to provide this for our members. So that's one of the things we heard, something that the association could offer to you. Other things is just more timely reporting. So this is you can get report at a monthly intervals. If you submit your data in time, you'll have it back within 4 weeks. So that's something really big that they wanted to ask for. Just in different standardizing for categories and customer segments so everyone can start talking in the same language. Because I know a lot of times you have to cobble together lots of information. So if we start on the same page, you can get to those decisions quicker and faster and talk with your team about what you want to do. So we were pretty excited about this, what we're doing. So ultimately, we launched the program July of this year, and these are just some of the key features and solutions that we have with it. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what these mean for you. But again, first and foremost, it is owned by NAED. So we listen to your feedback. We're going to collect your input. And if you want to make any sort of enhancements or changes to it, we can collect that data. And basically, D+R has to do what we say. So if there's something that's not working or something that you'd like to see, we're calling the shots on behalf of you. Okay. Other things, an intuitive interface, something that's easy and accessible. All of our members, they have different points and pain points that they wanted to address with this tool, so we wanted to make it as easy and flexible and dynamic as possible. So that was one of the things. We have this really great interface that you will be able to use. In addition, a variety of different reports. So you can get just a snapshot of some high-level product categories, or if you want to go down the rabbit hole and apply all kinds of filters, you'll be able to do that once we are able to start reporting. So it's very dynamic and flexible to your needs. Some of the other things that we talked about was customer segmentation as well as product categorization, and we'll take a little bit deeper dive into what that means momentarily, but really just, again, standardizing that language so we're all talking about the same thing is what we wanted. Okay. So I'll turn over to Toby to talk a little bit about where we're at right now and what we are looking forward to in the future.
Yeah. So thanks, Erica. So this table, and hopefully everyone can see it in the back, covers sort of how we intend to roll out various features with the system. So as Erica mentioned, we launched July. We're still getting more participants in, and part of what we'll cover later in the presentation is how we take sort of data confidentiality and security very seriously. So a lot of the granularity that you're seeing in these features are things that will roll out as we get enough data into the system. So to start, one of the things we're offering, as Erica mentioned, is the data export. And that's cleaning of your data and harmonizing it to customer segmentation, which we'll talk about in a bit, but also product categorization. So when you're looking at the data, are you looking at it in the same way that your counterparts would be looking at it? And what does it mean for a particular product category? If you're analyzing whether it's going up or down, are you looking at that product category in the same way? So the clean data export is what we offer right now. The aggregate data download for BI tools, which I'll show an example of later, is really sort of the heart of the system. So you may already have a market intelligence or a market analyst team. You have your own BI tools. So part of the offering for the system is that you'll be able to get the aggregate data set. If you don't have internal BI tools, we also have the custom queries. So you'll be able to pull the data either way. But that aggregate data download for BI tools, that's something that we're actually rolling out fairly soon. And then as far as the filters and the ability to dive into the details, we talked about geographic reporting, product categorization, customer segments. Right now we're starting at the very highest level, and so we're rolling out sort of national market level data. As we get enough participants within various states, regions, MSAs, we'll be able to roll those out as well. On the product categorization side, we're working very closely with IDEA and IDW. So we're getting a lot of the products identified. And then eventually we'll start to break those down. So right now we're identifying products as being within lighting, but obviously that's a pretty large category. So we'll be able to start diving into the granularity there. And then for customer segments, really looking at high-level categories that will be fairly intuitive, but then starting to drill down into NAECS classifications. And we'll cover a little bit more of that later. And really, we'll show the demo, but this is really a placeholder slide, just so that, again, what we're talking about is the ability to go into this website that we're building, be able to pull the data via either the custom query tool or the data export, and then be able to look at the market and your own performance so that you can benchmark how you're doing for given time periods, for product categories, for customer segments, for geographic regions. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dan. He's going to talk about that granularity in terms of the three sort of filters that we're looking at.
Sure, thanks, Toby. So really, we have those three segments Toby was talking about, and the idea in all of these segments is we are going to be sort of going down this list as we get more participants. So you can see here nationally, state, county, zip, MSA, and company-wide as far as comparisons go. So the idea is that the more data we get, the more we can report out. So we're going to start with national and work our way down the list. You'll have the ability to filter both the market level data and your own data by those specific geographic regions to do different analyses. The one other thing I'd like to mention is that it is a ship-to zip code that we're using. So as opposed to using just the branch location, this allows us to get far more granular than otherwise might be possible, particularly with the restrictions we have on reporting. So where there may be one or two dominant players in a particular market, there may be a lot of players selling into that market. So this allows us to dive down further and meet our reporting requirements. So the customer segmentation is another thing we've really been working on, and we actually have done a couple things here. NAED and the task force sat down and talked about what would be good customer classifications and landed on these broad categories for ways that we could look at different customers. We are also, though, using that and mapping those larger categories to NAECS codes. And we are willing and able to help anybody who's participating transform 6 to NAECS if you don't have that done already. Happy to work with people who may not have their customer information completely categorized. That's one of the benefits of enrolling in this program, is we actually will work through that process. We maintain all customer information confidential, and if you have NAECS codes, we don't need to know anything beyond that. If you want our help, though, and need to provide more of that information, we will keep it strictly confidential and perform that categorization for you. We're also doing the drill downs by different levels of subcategories. So if you're familiar with NAECS, each 2-digit code represents a sort of more subcategory of that industry. So you can do things like 2, 4, 6, or 8 long-term. That's what we're looking to go with. And finally, but not least, is the product categorization. And as you can see, this is probably the largest piece to tackle here. The goal long-term is to go down to 334 subcategories. We are going to start at those high-level NAED categories similar to the customer segmentation. We are basing that on UNSPSC, but the task force in NAED sat down and said, actually, these 11 are where we wanted to start with, so we make sure we get those high-level categories correct. After that, we will go down to those 34. Toby mentioned lighting earlier. Obviously, there's a ton of subcategories under lighting. Same thing with things like wire, cord, and cable. So the goal is, again, as long as we get enough participation, we will go as low as humanly possible. And we are even open to considering going below that, maybe even a 4th or 5th level category once the program is more mature. One of the things that gets mentioned a lot is lot billing. We know that's a complication. We have been working through how to disaggregate lot billing and working both internally with a product expert from NAED on methods and ways we can assign individual product categories to those lot bills.
And I'll jump in here. One of the things I had mentioned before is that we're trying to harmonize the product categorization with IDEA and IDW. So one of the things we're actually, NAED is helping us with is they're reaching out to manufacturers to get the specifications and the categorizations submitted to IDW, and that allows us to identify even more products. So we've only been working with them for a few months, and we have about 2.5 million products already categorized. So it's a matter of just working with manufacturers. And so I would say if you are a manufacturer and you want to know how to participate or how to help with this program, one thing you can do is make sure your product's information is being submitted to IDW, because that will help get everything harmonized. We also have presented the product categorization to IDEA, and they are on board with moving forward. So the hope, again, is by doing this, that the entire industry can be looking at the product categories and be speaking the same language.
So I'm going to run through just 3 basic use cases. Obviously, what I'm showing you here is just demonstrative data. It's not actual data at this point, so don't, anything you see on the next 5 graphics, please don't go home and say, oh boy, the market's down 6% in Pennsylvania. That's not the case. This is just an idea of what people do with this. I can speak broadly as well from my experience on the HVAC side, how HVAC distributors tend to use this over the 6 years the program has existed with them, and some of the important things to highlight. So the first is this sub-regional analysis, and we're sticking with the state here. This is something anybody will be able to do as well. Once they sign on to the program, you can get your data back categorized by this geographic region. If you want to know how I built this graphic very quickly and why we like those BI tools and having that download available, I just threw this into Microsoft BI very quickly. So we anticipate you'll be able to do the same thing. We would like to incorporate things like this in the online tool over time. But again, that BI export, which Toby will go over a little later, allows you to do these things right out of the gate once that is available to be downloaded. So one of the things, particularly for distributors for a couple of different markets, is actual benchmarking against local, the local region, whether that's state, MSA, or even some sort of selling region that you may be interested in. So in this case, you may say, okay, well, the market's down 6%, we're up 10%. So you're doing far better actually than the market at large. For something like Virginia, where you might be close, the overall market, if you looked at the US, might be 5%. You're on par in Virginia, but both are actually below what the national average growth rate looks like. So really just an idea of showing you how one of the most basic things you can do with this is just look at that geographic segmentation and really benchmark yourself, whether that be on overall sales or individual product categories based on regional trends. The second one, and this is probably the most important part when you look at this and you start layering in more things on top of it. So if you take that same geographic region and you could start doing those comparisons on a monthly basis, and then also looking at what the product segmentation is within a particular month. So for here again, demonstration data only, but one of the powerful things you could do is say, okay, June, my sales were down, the market is up. Why is that? What's going on? Where am I lagging, and where could I have done better, perhaps in the marketplace? And so you can see what I've done here is just highlighted that individual month and made a table showing that subcategory segmentation. So this is that blown up a little bit. And you can see in this case, 1C, 1D, and 1E were actually far underperforming in the market. In that case, they were also underperforming, generally speaking, at the market at large. But in this case, this distributor did much, much worse than even the market at large. So you can kind of get a sense, let's put some names to those categories and say this is lighting. And specifically, you find out that the T8 fluorescent market is way down, but the T-LED market's almost on par. That's sort of the way you could see what's actually going on in a particular product segmentation. So really gives you the answers of the why to the what happened. So if you were up or down, why did that happen? How did it occur? The same thing can be true of tracking internal strategies like marketing strategies. So for instance, we have two use cases here that you would maybe, if implemented a particular marketing strategy on a particular line or a manufacturer, and you can see how that is performed going forward through time. So you can track when your marketing campaign actually was implemented, and then look how the performance did compared to the market, and also can look at what happens after you take away some of those marketing programs or incentives. So another quick example here where you can see a campaign has ended. In this case, on the first graphic, that actually made a huge impact into the market and actually beat market performance. Obviously, there are a number of factors that could go into this, but you can start using this again to answer that why. Why is my performance what it is, and how did that actual campaign work out? In the same scenario, on the other side, without this information, without that true benchmark information, you may think, boy, my marketing campaign isn't working very good. Our sales are only up 2%. But if you presented a large bleed off that might be happening in the market at large, say in this case, the market may be down 10% and you're up 2%, that may be actually a very effective tool that you might have done away with without knowing what that actual market impact was at the aggregate level. Here's a closer look at that second scenario. It's just, general benchmarking. That is one of those things that's really important to get that actual data and also get it in a timely manner, as Erica had said earlier. If you get this, 3 months later, it really doesn't tell you enough. You may have spent a lot of money on that campaign for those 3 months without getting actually results reported back into you. Mm-hmm. Before we jump into the next slide, just because we were talking about this at dinner last night, I wanted to bring up an actual real-world example. It's from the HVAC side. And this is possibly the simplest way a tool like this could be used, but I think it's really demonstrative of how even this simple, in this case, is really enlightening. So we just closed our Q3 quarterly report on the HVAC side at the end of October, 1 month in the sort of after the close of the quarter. And there has been sort of these industry rumblings, particularly with the economic news you hear, housing markets kind of flattered down, stock markets taking a hit. Everybody was sure that one, this other data source that the manufacturers tend to look at was wrong, and the sales were down or close to 0% growth over the previous year's quarter. When we actually processed the data, it turned out that those sort of feelings about how the market was going were actually wrong. In that case, not only did the wholesale data match what was going on in the manufacturing side, it was actually about 1% higher growth. So it really is, we all get those feelings about how the market is doing, but really until you get that actual information, it's hard to know. And it's the very simplest case, but it really shows how perception and reality can be quite different.